guilty. Let's register on the electoral list. This is a message from Equinoxe Television.
Hi there viewers, happy new month to you all and welcome back from the weekend. It's time for the news. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, viewers. Our major stories this evening. Journalists in Cameroon over the weekend observed the International Press Freedom Day. The World Press Freedom Day comes within the context of a complicated working environment for journalists, ranging from intimidation to imprisonment and even the kidnap of some soldiers of the pen in Cameroon. We'll tell you more about our plights, the plights of journalists, in this news edition. And also in this edition, a 28-year-old man finally confesses to killing his own father. What spirit pushed Ivo to commit such a gruesome act? An answer in this newscast. And in religion, over 1.5 billion Catholic faithful across the globe are waiting for the election of a new pope. The 130 cardinals to elect the new successor of St. Peter already in Rome, and the Sistine Chapel where the election will take place is being properly prepared. Viewers, those are our major stories. Details and more in a moment. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you always for the confidence. Security forces have apprehended 28-year-old Ivo, who killed his father, Ndé Lawrence, that was last December 21, 2024, in the Njong village. Ivo, who has been hiding in Yaoundé, was lured to the Njong village recently, where he was arrested. During the reconstitution exercise that took place in the Njong village, the killer claimed he was hated by his father, reason he took away his father's life. Subaji Gabriel tells us more about that sad story.
Ndé Lawrence, who was assassinated on December 21, 2024, will finally rest in peace after his alleged murderer, his own son, Ivo, was arrested by security officers 3 months after he committed the act.
On 21st December, breaking 22nd, that is exactly what happened. After that, you know, he left from here with his father's phone, and we used some strategy to make him come over here with the help of the family. So we noticed that he traveled to Yaoundé, and it's only when he came back here that we could get hold of him to continue our investigation.
Ivo, who was picked up in the village, said he committed the act because his father hated him and kept warning him to stay away from his things. Ndé Lawrence, who was in his late 80s, was hit on the wall before Ivo used a stick to hit him 3 times.
He was the one that came and hit me first with a stick, and then said that I should not be touching his things. No, that is what he always said before, that I should not be touching his things. It was food that I came that day. Now, as he hit me open the pot, that's when he came out and he was having one stick on his hand. That's when he hit, and then I take out the stick and I push him and he hit him on the wall. And I also hit him back, carry him to his bed.
In the course of reconstituting his actions, Ivo showed the security officers how he carried out the act and was prepared to sell the pigs when the mother knew about the death of her husband. Consumption of hard drugs have been linked to the incident. The divisional officer of Santa Subdivision, who was also present during the reconstitution in Njong village, used the occasion to caution the natives of the village.
I seized the opportunity to urge you with more collaboration, because it's when we are working together hand to hand that we can bring back sustainable peace in our beloved subdivision and eradicate that criminality and terrorism. We are now sensitized to denounce about the drugs consumption. The key word is collaboration.
Ivo will be handed to competent judicial authorities in the days ahead for justice to take its course.
Sad indeed. Now we told you in the headlines that journalists in Cameroon joined their counterparts the world over to observe the World Press Freedom Day that was last weekend. 3 decades after the introduction of liberty laws in Cameroon, Cameroon's press freedom continues to face threats. Journalists cite restrictions, interference, and safety issues as major obstacles to free reporting. Their reactions fall within reflections marking the 2025 edition of the World Press Freedom Day. For me, I'm Trong Sanda. Tells us more.
The 2025 edition of the World Press Freedom Day provided an occasion for journalists to question the level of freedom, particularly press freedom in Cameroon, 3 decades after the 1990 reforms and the introduction of pluralism in the country.
In Nigeria, the president of the National Communication Council is voted by the private press and the public press. But in Cameroon, it is an appointment that comes from the president. And I think that nobody can bite rather the finger that fits it. That's why Professor Enotan John, may so rest in peace, at one time said that he who pays the piper dictates the tune.
So in Cameroon, it's very difficult to have information. If I ask you, for instance, to make an investigation on how do someone manage to get money in Alinka 24, as we used to call it, we'll see that it's very difficult for you. If you want to know exactly if President Biya has another nationality, why is he permanently in Switzerland, we will have a lot of problem to have this kind of documents. If you want to know exactly what is the salary of our ministers, you will have a lot of problem to get this kind of information. In other countries, people know exactly what is the salary of their presidents and their ministers. In our country, it's totally impossible to have this kind of information. Why?
Above the institutional speed breaks, Alois Onana says the socio-economic and social environment has been made extremely hostile for journalism practice and the well-being of journalists in the country.
It's also very difficult for us to finance our enterprise, our newspapers and other platforms where we are working. In one word, being a journalist in Cameroon is something which is very difficult. Even though we mention difficulties, there's no reason to give up. Even if you have seen Martinez Zogo being killed or others in Northwest and Southwest disappeared, there's no reason to give up.
In a nutshell, journalists identify media polarization, limited access to information, economic pressure, safety issues, lack of media independence, censorship, governance interference, and legal restrictions as the major characteristics of a challenging environment for press freedom in Cameroon.
And now talking about the plight of journalists in Cameroon, a dark cloud hovers around the media landscape in Bamenda in the Northwest region following the abduction of a journalist and author Fred Vauban, who was kidnapped on May 4th, that was yesterday, by unidentified gunmen. The incident occurred just a day after World Press Freedom Day, a global event meant to celebrate the resilience of journalists and defend their rights. Bustella tells us what happened in Bamenda.
According to sources familiar with the incident, Fred Vauban was returning from a visit to his village in Big Babanki on Saturday, May 4th, when his vehicle was stopped by armed men. He was then taken away from the car and driven to an unknown destination. Since then, his whereabouts has remained unknown and he has been unreachable. Fred had informed some of his colleagues in Bamenda of his travel plans, but what was supposed to be a routine journey ended in his disappearance, and so far, no group has claimed responsibility. Since the Anglophone crisis erupted in 2016, journalists in the Northwest and Southwest regions have faced relentless threats. Many have been caught in crossfire between government forces and separatist fighters. So far, over 10 media houses have been closed down in the Northwest region alone, leaving dozens of journalists unemployed or worse still, in danger. Fred's abduction comes in the shadow of past tragedies. Samuel Wazizi died in military custody, while Anyende So was shot dead, and the perpetrators claimed it was a mistaken identity. Others have been kidnapped, tortured, or silenced for simply doing their jobs. In the 2025 Press Freedom Index, Cameroon is ranked 131st out of 180 countries, placing it in the difficult category for media operations. Fred Vubem's kidnap is not just a local issue. It is a brutal reminder of the dangers journalists faced in the conflict zones like the Northwest region. This latest attack on a journalist is being regarded as an attack on all journalists.
Thank you, Stella. Hopefully, journalist Fred Vubem be released safe and sound. Now we talk something else. Natives of Matipe village in Konjok subdivision in the Nkam division of the Littoral expressed disappointment over the abandonment of an integrated health center project to fauna by contractors since its launching over a decade ago. The health center that was expected to bring them relief is instead a support towards vegetation, as innocent as it tells in the report which comes up next.
This is the present state of the Majib Integrated Health Center found in Konjok Subdivision, in Kam Division of the Littoral Region. A project abandoned in ruins by contractors for over a decade, washing the joy of the population of Majib village in the ocean. He says everyone was happy when the project to construct the health center was launched. They got disappointed along the line when the contractor disappeared, abandoning the project uncompleted. Vegetation has taken over in its own direction. Natives of Majib have been left questioning if the contractor fell from the sky or actually employed by the government. On countless instances, the natives of Majib received information to clear the wide vegetation for resumption of the project, yet nothing.
Chaque année, on vient de défricher la site, de libérer le bâtiment. On veut le faire, mais rien ne change.
Tired of wasting their energy clearing the vegetation for a barren project, they have allowed the white vegetation to dictate its laws on the abandoned hospital infrastructure. They go through pain to seek medical services in distant villages.
Il y a des gens qui mettent ici rien que pour 5 000 qui peuvent payer le transport pour aller en Konjok.
Patients in emergency situations die on the way, and pregnant women in labor give birth on the way.
Je ne sais pas si le président de la République pense aussi à Majib.
Local authorities and the Ministry of Public Health are implored to see into their suffering and demand for a good health center.
Now let's talk religion. We take you to the Vatican. We are days away from what will be a new chapter for the Roman Catholic Church as the official mourning period for Pope Francis ends and the preparations for the conclave begin. Some 130 cardinals of the Catholic Church on Sunday participated in a special Holy Mass that took place at the Vatican. Immaculate Fogui tells us more.
The Catholic Church has concluded a traditional 9-day mourning period for the late Pope, marking the end of an era with the final Mass held in the St. Peter's Basilica. The Church now shifts its focus to the conclave where 135 cardinal lectors will gather to choose a new spiritual leader. The secretive process kicks off on May 7th with cardinals meeting in isolation to elect the next Pope through multiple rounds of voting. With mourning rites now complete, the Church turns its focus to the upcoming conclave. Vatican officials have installed a chimney atop the Sistine Chapel, signaling preparations for the secretive election process. The black or white smoke that rises from it will indicate whether a new pope has been selected. Black for no decision, white for success. As the cardinals prepare to cast their ballots, the legacy of the late Pope, known for his humility and reform efforts, will likely influence their decision. The conclave will be a pivotal moment in the Church's history, shaping its future, direction, and leadership. With the world watching, the cardinals will need to balance the tradition with the need for innovation and progress. As the Church embarks on this new chapter, one thing is certain: the late Pope's impact will continue to be felt and his legacy will serve as a guiding force to the new leader.
Sure, Immaculate. Now in news out of the country, Brice Clotaire Oligui has been sworn in as a new Gabonese president for a 7-year mandate, while supporters of the main Ivorian opposition party, the PDCI, are demanding the reinstatement of their candidate Tidjane Thiam, whose candidacy was rejected under claims of dual nationality. Details of our foreign page roundup with Malagori.
Hundreds of Malians carried out a demonstration in Bamako on Saturday, May 3rd, at the call of a broad coalition of political parties that fear their possible dissolution by the ruling junta. This coalition of around 100 parties demand the effective end of the political military transition no later than December 31st, 2025. And call for the establishment of a timetable for a rapid return to the constitutional order. And elsewhere, thousands of young supporters of the main Ivorian opposition party gathered in Abidjan on Saturday, May 4th, to demand the reinstatement of their candidate, Tidjane Thiam, in the race for the October presidential election. According to some of the PDIC party members, if Tidjane Thiam is not on the final electoral list, there will be no election in Côte d'Ivoire. In Gabon, Brice Clotaire Oligui, who won the April 12 presidential election with 94.85% of the vote, was officially sworn in as president of Gabon on Saturday at the Sino-Gabonese Friendship Stadium in Libreville, the country's capital. The oath of office was administered before the Constitutional Court and in the presence of the Transitional Parliament. About 20 African heads of state attended the inauguration ceremony. According to the Constitution, approved by the referendum on November 16, 2024, the President of the Gabonese Republic is elected for a 7-year term and renewable ones.
Now we talk sports. For the 22nd day of play of the Elite One Championship, several clubs were absent from the pitch. These include Aigle of Mongo, Bambutus of Buda, and Young Sport Academy. Reasons for the absence of some of the clubs. In this report by Seti Chapizio.
Matches of day 22 of the Elite One Championship were not played due to the absence of some clubs in their different stadiums. As announced at the beginning of the week, Young Sport Academy did not show up for their match against Gazelle at the Rumde Aja Annex Stadium in Garoua. A day after the draw against Dinamo, their president, Imam Mimba, made it clear that Young Sport Academy will no longer take part in the championship. According to him, some clubs had received money and his club hadn't, an injustice that he wanted to denounce. However, the Cameroon Football Federation FICAFOOT has not yet reacted to his outing. Elsewhere on another stadium, Aigle Royal of Mungo also was absent and did not play their match against Dinamo. On April 30, 2025, the team sent a letter to the Cameroon Football Federation requesting the postponement of its match against Dinamo of Douala, scheduled for Sunday, May 4, 2025, at the Bepanda Annex Stadium. In the letter, the club Secretary General explained that he is requesting the postponement. He says, for reasons beyond our control, including the lack of financial resources to pay the salaries of the players and coaches, training bonuses, transportation of the Douala Konsamba Douala team, and accommodation and meals for the players and coaches during their stay in Douala. Despite this request, the match was scheduled to go ahead. The team managed to find travel arrangements and arrived in Douala on Saturday evening without incident. However, the players were hospitalized due to health problems related to poor nutrition. At the Buda Municipal Stadium, Colombe du Sud was ready to play its match against Bambutos of Buda, but Bambutos were nowhere to be found. A group of young players, mobilized by anonymous individuals, attempted to play under the colors of Bambutos, but they were prevented from playing due to a lack of valid licenses. The Cameroon Football Federation FICAFOOT Disciplinary Committee will rule on the cases of the absent teams. Some reached sanctions which could result in relegation to the Elite 2 Championship.
That was it for the first part. The news talking point is up next. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is Charly NDI CHIA. He is a veteran journalist, a one-time member of the National Communication Council, a publisher, and also an author. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting to be our guest on Talking Point tonight. We just observed World Press Freedom Day that was last weekend. Charly NDI CHIA, you are a veteran journalist with several years of journalism practice, and you have trained a great number of media personalities in this country, including my humble self. Looking at the media landscape in Cameroon, can we say without fear that there exists a free press in the country?
Okay, thanks for giving me this opportunity to interact with you and your audience. And I'll start off by saying that freedom of speech maybe, just maybe, is relative to particular situations. You cannot, for example, expect for it to be donated to you, like this government is in the habit of saying that, okay, the head of state has donated this thing, it is thanks to the head of state that you have democracy, it is thanks to the head of state that you have a university. No, freedom of speech is taken. It may be in the statute books, but there will also be somebody, always be somebody or some interest trying to stifle it. So journalists everywhere in the world, not only in Cameroon, spend all their life, their working lifetime, their professional lifetime, fighting for freedom of speech, fighting to have it sustained, and fighting to ensure that it is not taken from them. So there is freedom of speech in Cameroon. It is left for us to take it. But are we taking it? Yes and no. A few bold people, fortunately, Equinoxe is one of them, have been practicing journalism as it is supposed to be, have been going for that freedom and not waiting for it to be served on the table, on the gold platter for them. Others yet sing every day, oh, freedom of speech. We don't have access to news, we don't have access to information, we don't have access to A and B and C and so on and so forth. We should be prepared to grab that freedom of expression with our two hands and then probably wait, to borrow from Idi Amin, wait for freedom after expression.
Now, Charly NDI CHIA, nowadays there is this much talk about press freedom, like you mentioned. The government, through the National Communication Council, claims the press is more free today than it was in the yesteryears. As a big name in the profession and someone who has experienced the two epochs, can you compare, why not contrast press freedom of the early 90s and what obtains nowadays or today? Illustrations from your personal life will be excellent, because we know that there were moments you were severely tortured as a journalist.
Yes, I functioned briefly under the Ahijo regime as a corp reporter. By the time I returned from journalism school, Ahijo had handed over the baton to Bia. And under Ahijo, we knew that, okay, these were no-go areas. You couldn't do this. If you did it, you were ready to take the axe on their head. So most journalists only published what we published: bread and butter stories. We hardly made political analysis and so on. But Bia came with the so-called rigor and moralization, liberalization, and stuff like that. And we went for it, scoop, line, and sinker. And of course, we were beaten by it. Because, okay, it was freedom to then, initially, to criticize Ahijo and to praise Bia. Under Ahijo, I suffered just one detention. Under Paul Bia, I suffered 15 of them. I was tortured. Yes, you can imagine you crammed in a small room of about 4 by 4 meters with 12 other detainees stripped to your pants. You have 2 buckets in that room, one in that detention facility. One is for for urine, the other one is for feces. You poo there, all of you. And all of this is because of thought control. Somebody is seeking to control how you think, to filter who gets what, to ensure that the people that purportedly employed them, yes, that voted them to office, are not aware of their rights, do not make certain demands, whether they're legitimate or not, and so on. So you find, and then you lock up somebody like that, and you say you're an SDO, you're a governor, and you stay in your house enjoying. I think it was a measure of primitivity.
Great ordeal there you went through. Now, when you look at the media landscape today, do you think journalists are brave enough to take the freedom of the press imbibed in the law of Cameroon like you did in your days?
I keep the laws of Cameroon, what you call laws, to me they're like face powder. It's like we have face powder democracy today. A woman powders her face and looks beautiful, and by the time she removes that, we call it masquerade, she looks as ugly as sin. She'll be looking as ugly as sin. Those laws, fine, they are laws, but it is, I think the laws are tailored in such a way that they catch only the small flies, the midgets. The hornets and the bees sail through. So the laws of this country, including what you call press, laws that govern the press freedom, are like Father Christmas. Their justice in this country is like Father Christmas. Whether it is justice to allow a journalist to function the way he is supposed to function, without let. Those laws are like Father Christmas, available. I mean, the justice system in this country is like Father Christmas, available only to the highest bidder. You young people coming out of the university, you are very well trained, yes, trained in research methods, trained in maybe in how to investigate. You have the tools, all of them. I can see you are using a very little thing in your hand. In our days, like you mentioned before this interview started, we were carrying big tape recorders, spool to spool and stuff. We were writing longhand. We didn't have as many. There was no internet. There was nothing like even we call it Facebook, WhatsApp, and so forth. We would trek long distances and produce news, credible news, even if we were not allowed to interpret it. But every now and again we interpreted it, and that is why people like Simon Dikuba, may his soul rest in peace, one of the godfathers of Anglophone journalism in this country, Jerome Gwelem, Tato Benson, S.N. Tita, the father of the popular Professor Julius Chetita here. That's why they were always in jail, but they had their heads high. You never heard of gombo left and right. If they were given that so-called gombo, they would name who had tried to give them the gombo and shame the person in the media.
Thank you, Uncle Charlie. Talking about torture and imprisonment of journalists, in the past it might have been physical, yet you guys remained resilient, steadfast. Don't you think the fact that journalists are frequently being summoned by the organ that regulates the media landscape in Cameroon can somehow negatively affect a journalist's pen? He or she can feel intimidated and bow to pressure, sacrificing balanced reporting.
That's another thing. If we had been in a position to police our ranks, you will not. If we had agreed and effectively found a way of policing our ranks as journalists, you will not have the National Communication Council. But yet, it is there because nature abhors a vacuum. And fortunately for whoever set up that National Communication Council, whoever set it up might have thought that it was a tool for him to silence the media. But unfortunately, the terms of reference of the National Communication Council, as prescribed by its initiators, are very clear. They are not answerable to anybody. As individuals or as a team on, given in a particular point in its life, it might make certain compromises, it might function somehow. But I think that during our day, we knew that, okay, these were our assigned roles. This was our, I think the French call it cahier de charge, I'm forgetting the English name. This is what we are supposed to do and stuff. And we did it. We were not like chasing the media left and right. Actually, we interacted so much in the Peter Isoka-led council. We did lots of work. We worked with the media. I think that yes, I think there was a coffee kind of thing. This Chebonkeng's council is an extension of what we were doing. Same thing. But if we give room for the council to slice our throats, fine, they will slice it. And you remember, they may not have told you, but there is pressure. There is always pressure on the heads of the members of the National Communication Council, from members of government, from directors left and right, from money bags and so on. They are always trying to use the council to settle scores.
Thank you so much, Charly NDI CHIA. We would have loved to have more of this conversation. Because of time constraint, we would have to end here for now. At the beginning of this conversation or this interview, I mentioned that you're an author, and your most recent publication is Ink in My Blood by Charly NDI CHIA, which will be launched. That would be at the Catholic University in Buea. It will happen on the 17th of May, that is on Saturday. And we are going to be talking more on that in our subsequent news editions. Thank you so much, Uncle Charly NDI CHIA, for accepting to be our guest on Talking Point tonight. Viewers, thank you so much for always being with us. That was what we gathered for you this evening on the news. Our programs continue. Equinoxe comes up at 7 p.m. and the news in the French language comes up at 8 p.m. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television and see you again tomorrow, same time, God willing. Bye-bye for now.